Good morning, everyone. I'm Miss Andrea, and I'm the first reporter. So, our topic for this morning is Chapter 4 Material Management. As we go along, may I introduce to you our objectives to understand what is material management, to identify what are its scopes and functions, to know the techniques of material planning, to learn the objectives, parameters, and procedure of purchasing, to discover the right way of selecting supplies, to apprehend what is store management, to determine what is inventory control, its objectives, benefits, and techniques, to have the knowledge about computation of economic order quantity. And lastly is to learn what is standardization. Now let's go to the 4.1, the meaning and intro of material management. Its function is to aim for integrated approach towards the management of materials, which is a method for planning, organizing, and controlling the activities that can relate to to the flow of materials in a business or a company. It can also lead to the control of the location, movement, and time of those materials from their introduction, production, manufacturing process, and final delivery. The objective is the cost reduction and efficient handling of a material at all stages and all sections. So, next is the scope or function of material management. These are the material planning um, and control, purchasing, store management, inventory management, and other related functions. I won't discuss it further since it will be thoroughly discussed by my group members. So, number one is the material planning. This involves estimating the individual requirements of materials, preparing material budget, forecasting the levels of inventories, scheduling the orders, and monitoring the purchase and issues. It's based on the sales and production plans. Next is the purchasing is the organized acquisition of goods and services on behalf of the buying entity. So as far as I know, we encounter this word since we took senior high, and even now this is also includes selection of sources of supply, finalization in terms of purchase, placement of orders. Next is the store management. This involves physical control of material, preservation of materials, minimization of obsolescence and damage through timely disposal and efficient handling, maintenance of store records, proper location and stocking. So store is also responsible for the physical verification of stock and reconciliation them with the book figures. So the inventory ordering quantities, settings, stock levels, lead time analysis, and reporting, a store plays vital role in the operation of a company. Next is the inventory management. Inventory generally refers to the materials in stock. It is called the idle resource of an enterprise. Inventories represent those items which are stock for sale, or they are in the process of manufacturing, or they are in the form of materials. So we have other related activities which are the standardization, implication, simplification, specification, value analysis, ergonomics, and just in time. Let's proceed to 4.3, the material planning and control. So, It defines scientific techniques of determining in advance the requirements of raw materials, ancillary parts and components and spares and etc. So, what are the factors which influences material planning? First, we have the macro factors. Factors that is outside the business such as price, trends, business cycle, import policy, and etc. Next is the micro factors. And these are the plant's capacity utilization, rejection rates, lead times, inventory levels, working capital, delegation of power, and communication, which are factors within the business venture. Next are the techniques and material planning. Wait a minute. It is based on the demands plan for end products. So forecasting tools such as weighted average method, time series method, and exponential smoothing are some of the widely known methods used for the material planning. Upon the demand forecasting, the material planning activity is pursued. So first is the bill of material. It is a centralized source of information containing a list of items used to manufacture a product and its instruction on how to do so. Next is the explosion chart. It is a series of bills of materials grouped together in a matrix form so that combining the requirements for different components can be done. Next is the requirement of materials. It is a system for calculating the materials and component needed to the manufacture a product. And it also consists of three primary steps. So first is taking inventory of the materials and components on hand and identifying which additional ones are needed and then scheduling their production or purchase. Next is the delivery of scheduling for materials. Uh, the category selected for the purchase order type when the delivery schedule is created regulates the type of the schedule to be used. Next is the forecasting techniques. Forecasting techniques is a technique that uses historical data as inputs to make informed estimates that are predictive in determining the direction of a future trends. The naive forecasting method based on a projection for a future period on a data recorded for a past period. So these are the four techniques: a weighted average, exponential smoothing, trend analysis, and correction. A weighted average is sometimes more accurate than simple average. The exponential smoothing is a rule of thumb techniques for smoothing time series data using the exponential window function. Trend analysis is based on the idea that what has happened in the past gives traders an idea of what will happen in the future. And lastly is the correction. Now, let's go to the purchasing, the 4.4. So, it buying of equipment, materials, tools, parts, and etc. that required for industry also. It can also procurement by purchase of the equipments and supply for stores, use in the manufacture of a product adapted to marketing in the proper quality and quantity at the proper time and the lowest price, consistent with the quality desired. The objective of purchasing. In purchasing, its objective is not only to procure the raw materials at the lowest price, but to reduce the cost of the final product. So, number one, to avail the material supplies and equipment at the minimum possible cost. These are the inputs in a manufacturing operation. The minimization of the inputs cost increases the productivity and resultantly the profitability of the operation. Next is to ensure the continuous flow of production through continuous supply of raw materials, components, tools, and etc. with repair and maintenance service. Next, to increase the set turnover. With repair and maintenance, I mean, the investment in the inventories should be kept minimum in relation to the volume of sales. This will increase the turnover of the asset and thus the profitability of the company. Next is to develop an alternative source of supplies. So, exploration of alternative sources of supplies of materials increases the bargaining ability of the buyer, minimization of cost of materials, and increasing the ability to meet the emergencies. So number five is to establish and maintain the good relations with the suppliers. So maintenance of good relation with the supplier help in evolving a favorable image in a in a business circles, such as such relation are beneficial to the buyer in terms of changing the reasonable price, preferential allocation of material in case of material shortage, and etc. Number six, to achieve maximum integration with other department of the company. The purchase function is related with the production department for specification and flow of materials. Engineering department for the purchase of tools, equipments and machines. Marketing department for the forecast of sales and its impact on procurement of materials. Financial department for the purpose of maintenance level of materials and estimating the working capital required. Personnel department for the purpose of manning and developing the personnel of purchase department and maintaining the good vendor relationship. Next is to train the what do you call that? To train the develop the personnel. Purchasing department is manned with varied types of personnel. So the company should be try to build the imaginative employees force through training and development. Next is the efficient record keeping and management reporting. Paper processing is inherent in the purchase function. Such paper processing should be standardized so that record keeping can be facilitated. Periodic reporting to the management about the purchase activities justifies the independent existence of the department. So now let's go to the parameters of purchasing. The success of any manufacturing activity is largely dependent on the procurement of raw materials of right quality and the right quantities from the right source at the right time and at the right price. So, popularly known as 10 R's of the art of efficient purchasing. They are described as the basic principle of purchasing. So, first is the right price. It is the primary concern of any manufacturing organization to get an item at the right price. But the right price not to be lowest price. It is very difficult to determine the right price. Generally, guidance can be had from the cost structure of the product. Next is the right quality. The right quality implies that quality should be available, measurable, and understandable as far as practicable. In order to determine the quality of a product's sampling schemes will be useful. So the right quality is determined by the cost of materials and technical characteristic as suited to the specific requirements. Next is the right time. For determining the right time, the purchase manager should have lead the time information for all products and analysis its components for reducing the same. So lead time is the total time elapsed between the recognition of the needs of an item till the item arrives and is provided for use. So this covers the entire duration of the material cycles and consists of precontractual and administrative lead time, manufacturing and transporting lead time, um, and its inspection lead time. Next is the right source. The source from which the materials is procured should be dependable and capable of supplying items of uniform quality. So, the buyer has to decide which item should be directly obtained from the manufacturer. Source selection or the source development and vendors rating plays an important role in buyer seller's relationship. In emergencies, open market purchases and bazaar purchases are um, restored too. Next is the right quantity. So, the right quantity is the most important parameter in buying. So, the concepts such as economic order, economic order quantity, the economic purchase quantity, fixed period, and fixed quantity system will serve as a broad guidelines. But the buyer has to use his knowledge, experience, and a common sense to determine the quantity after considering the factors such as price structure, discounts, availability of the item, favorable reciprocal relation, and make or buy consideration. Next is the right attitude. Developing the right attitude to is necessary as one often comes across such statements. Purchasing knows the price of everything and value of nothing. We buy, we buy price and not cost. When will our, when will our order placer become purchase manager? Purchasing acts like a post box. Therefore, purchasing should keep progress as its key activity and should be future oriented. The purchases manager should be innovative and his long-term objective should be to to be minimize the cost of to be the ultimate product. He will be able to achieve this if he aims himself with techniques such as value analysis, material intelligence, purchases research, SWOT analysis, purchase budget leads time analysis, and so on and so forth. Next is the right contract. The buyer has to adopt separate policies and procedures for capital and consumer items. He should be able to distinguish between indigenous and international purchasing procedures. He should be aware of the legal and contractual aspect in international practices too. Next is the uh, right material. Right type of material required for the production is an important parameter in purchasing techniques, such as value analysis will enable the buyer to allocate the right material. Next is the right transportation. The right mode of transportation have to be identified as this form as critical segment in the cost profile of an item. It is established fact that the cost of the shipping or of ore, gravel, and sand or etc. is normally more than the cost of the item itself. So lastly is the right place of delivery. Specifying the right place of delivery like head office or works would often minimize the handling and transportation cost. Now let's go to purchasing procedure. So the procedure describes the sequence of steps leading to the completion of an identified specific task. So the purchasing procedure comprises the following steps as indicated in figure 4.4. So first is the need of recognition. At this stage, the company recognizes and documents a need for goods or services to solve a particular problem. The procurement team describes the needs to be met and works with others to determine how best to do so. Next is the selection of the supplier. The process of selection of supplier involves two basic aspects: searching for all possible sources and shortlisting out of the identified sources. So the complete information about the supplier is available from various sources such as trade directories, advertisement, trade journal, direct mailing by the supplier, interview with supplier, salesman, suggestion from business associates, visit to trade fair, participation in industry convention, and always remember that not all low bidder is the best bidder. So number three is the placing the order. Once the supplier is selected, the next step is to place the purchase order. So the purchase order is a letter sent to the supplier asking to supply the said material. At least 6 copies of purchase order are prepared by the purchase section and each copy is separately signed by the purchase officer. Out of this copy, 1 copy each is sent to the storekeeper, supplier, account section, department, and to the department placing the requisition, and 1 copy is retained by the purchase department for record. Number four is follow up of the order or the follow up procedure should be employed wherever the cost and risk resulting from the delayed deliveries of materials are greater than the cost of follow up procedure. The follow up procedure tries to see that the purchase order is confirmed with the supplier and the delivery is promised. It is also necessary to review the outstanding orders at regular interval and communicate with the suppliers in case of needs. Next is the receiving and inspection of the material. The receiving department receives the materials supplied by the vendors. So the quantity are verified and tallied with the purchase order. The receipt of the material is recorded on the specially designed receiving slip or form which also specify the name of the vendors and the purchase order number. It also records any discrepancy, damage, condition of the consignment, or inferiority of the material. The purchase department is informed immediately about the receipts of the materials. Next is the payment of the invoice. When the goods are received in satisfactory condition, the invoice is checked before it is approved for the payment. The invoice is checked to see that the goods were duly authorized to purchase. They were properly ordered They are priced as per the agreed terms, and the quantity and quality confirmed to the order. The calculation are arithmetically correct. Next is maintenance of the records. It is important part of the parcel of the efficient purchase function. In the industrial firms, most of the purchases are repeated order and hence the part records serve as a good guide. I mean, a good guide for a future action. They are very useful for deciding the timing of the purchases and in selecting the best source of the supply. So next is the maintenance of vendor relations. The quantum and frequency of the transaction with the same key suppliers provide a platform for the purchase department to establish and maintain good relation with them. Good relation develop mutual trust and confidence in the course of the time, which is beneficial to both the parties. The efficiency of the purchase department can be measured by the amount of the goodwill it has with the supplier. So, this will be the end of my report. Thank you for listening. I am Andrea Marie Ancla.